The vet's office was silent, except for the faint, broken breaths of a dying puppy in his owner's arms. Tears streamed down her face as she whispered, "I'm so sorry. I love you." Everyone in the room could feel it, the moment no pet owner ever wants to face. The tiny German Shepherd puppy weakly lifted his paw and wrapped it around her arm as if hugging her goodbye. But just as the vet prepared the injection, something happened. The puppy's body tensed, his heart monitor spiked, and the vet froze mid-motion. Wait, this isn't normal. What he discovered seconds later would leave everyone speechless and prove that sometimes love itself can bring the impossible back to life. Before we start, make sure to hit like, share, and subscribe. And really, I'm curious, where are you watching from? Drop your country name in the comments. I love seeing how far our stories travel. The shelter smelled faintly of disinfectant and damp fur, a place filled with both beginnings and endings. The sun was setting through the wire mesh windows, painting long golden streaks across the concrete floor. Emily stood at the far end of the hallway, clutching the small bundle in her arms, a weak German Shepherd puppy named Max. His breathing was shallow, his body limp, yet his eyes still carried that same soft, trusting glow that had melted her heart the day she first met him. The vet's voice was quiet but heavy. "He's not responding to treatment anymore," she said gently. "His organs are failing. It's only a matter of hours." The words echoed in Emily's mind like a slow-motion fall. Hours. That's all she had left. She pressed her face against Max's fur, inhaling the faint puppy scent mixed with antiseptic. "It's okay, baby," she whispered, voice breaking. "You can rest now." Around them, the shelter had gone silent. Volunteers who had watched Emily nurse Max for weeks now avoided her eyes, their hearts breaking for her. She had rescued him when no one else would, a discarded pup found by the roadside, too weak to stand. She had promised him he'd never be alone again. And now she had to keep that promise one last time. Max whimpered faintly, his paw twitching against her arm. Emily stroked his tiny head, whispering nonsense words. Anything to keep him calm. "You're such a brave boy. Mommy's right here." She didn't notice the tears falling until one landed softly on his paw. The puppy's dull eyes blinked as if sensing her pain. For a brief second, his tail gave the smallest, almost invisible wag. It was enough to shatter her completely. The vet returned, holding a clipboard and a small syringe. "Are you ready?" she asked softly. Emily nodded, though her throat felt sealed shut. The vet hesitated, then said, "You can hold him during the procedure. He'll go peacefully." Emily sat down, holding Max close against her heart. The world blurred as the sound of her heartbeat filled her ears. But just before the vet could begin, Max shifted. Weakly, he lifted his head and pressed it against Emily's neck. His paw moved, slow, trembling, and wrapped around her arm. A tiny, desperate hug. Gasps filled the room. Even the vet froze. Emily's tears flowed freely as she held him tighter. That simple, impossible gesture, a dying puppy hugging his human, was his final thank you, or so everyone thought, because in that single, heartbreaking moment, something inside Max's body began to change. The next morning, the sky was a pale watercolor of pink and gold. Emily hadn't slept. She sat on the old wooden bench outside the shelter, cradling Max in her arms as if time itself would stop if she held him tightly enough. The air was cold, but she didn't feel it. Her heart felt numb. Every rise and fall of his chest was a countdown she couldn't escape. People passed quietly, giving her sympathetic glances. They knew her by now, the young woman who refused to give up on a dying puppy. For weeks, she had spent her savings on medicine, drove miles every night for checkups, and even learned how to feed him through a syringe. "He's my family," she used to say whenever someone told her to let go. And she meant it. Inside the shelter, the staff whispered among themselves. "She won't make it through this," one said softly. "He's her whole world." The vet, Dr. Harris, watched from the doorway, her heart heavy. She had seen many goodbyes, but this one was different. There was something about that dog. The way he tried to stay awake just to look at Emily, as if afraid she'd disappear if he blinked. Emily felt his small body twitch again. She looked down, brushing her thumb over his ear. "Remember when I found you, Max?" she murmured. "You were so tiny. I thought you wouldn't make it past the night." Her voice cracked. memories flashing like faded film reels. The storm, the roadside ditch, the faint whimper she'd followed in the rain. She had wrapped him in her jacket that night, whispering promises she intended to keep forever. Now sitting in that same jacket, she realized forever might be shorter than she'd hoped. A single tear slipped down her cheek and fell onto Max's fur. He stirred faintly, pressing his nose weakly against her hand. That simple gesture was enough to undo her. "You don't have to fight anymore," she whispered. "Just know that you were loved." As the sun dipped lower, its light bathed them both in gold. Emily looked up, realizing the whole world seemed to pause. Even the distant barking in the kennels had gone quiet. The shelter door creaked open and Dr. Harris stepped out slowly. "It's time," she said softly. Emily stood, holding Max close. Each step toward the exam room felt heavier than the last. She could hear her own heartbeat, loud and uneven. When they reached the door, she hesitated, just for a moment, and pressed her lips gently to Max's forehead. "I'll be right here," she whispered. And as she crossed the threshold, she didn't notice that Max's paw twitched again, as if trying to hold on a little longer. It had been raining that night, the kind of cold, relentless rain that turns streets into rivers and silence into loneliness. Emily had been driving home from work, her headlights slicing through the downpour when she saw something on the side of the road. At first, she thought it was just a piece of trash, a shadow flickering under the streetlight, but then it moved. She slammed on the brakes and jumped out, rain soaking her hair and clothes instantly. "Hello?" she called, her voice barely audible over the storm. That's when she heard it, a faint, broken whimper. She followed the sound until her flashlight landed on a small, trembling shape, huddled beside a storm drain. A German shepherd puppy, no bigger than a loaf of bread, his fur matted with mud and blood. Emily's heart clenched. "Oh my God," she whispered, kneeling beside him. The puppy tried to lift his head but didn't have the strength. His tiny body was cold to the touch. She looked around, no collar, no sign of anyone searching. Someone had abandoned him. Without hesitation, she took off her jacket and wrapped him gently inside, shielding him from the rain. "It's okay, sweetheart," she murmured. "You're safe now." Inside her car, she turned on the heater full blast and cradled him close. He was barely breathing, his tiny chest rising in shallow waves. Emily drove straight to the nearest emergency vet clinic, praying the whole way. "Please, just hang on," she whispered over and over, her tears mixing with the rain still dripping from her face. At the clinic, the vet on duty took one look at the puppy and frowned. "He's severely malnourished," he said. "And he's got a high fever. It's going to take a miracle for him to survive the night." Emily didn't hesitate. "Then let's make one happen," she said firmly. She stayed by his side all night, refusing to leave even when the nurses suggested she rest. She talked to him softly, telling him stories, promising that if he fought, she'd fight with him. When morning came, the vet was shocked to find the puppy still alive, weak but breathing steadily. "He made it," he said, smiling for the first time. Emily looked down at the tiny survivor in her lap and whispered, "You're a fighter, huh?" The puppy blinked slowly, his little paw brushing her hand. That was the moment she named him Max. From that day on, she wasn't just his rescuer, she was his world. Neither of them knew it yet, but that stormy night was only the beginning of a bond that would defy everything, even death itself. Weeks passed, and little by little, Max began to show signs of strength. He started walking short distances, wagging his tail when Emily entered the room, even barking softly when she laughed. He was still small for his age, but his spirit burned bright. To Emily, he was more than just a dog. He was living proof that love could rebuild what the world had broken. But one morning, everything changed. Emily woke to find Max trembling, his breathing ragged, his once bright eyes dull. He refused to eat, and every step he took seemed painful. Panic gripped her chest. She rushed him to the vet, clutching him close the entire drive, whispering, "You're okay, baby, you're okay." But deep down, she feared the truth. Dr. Harris examined him carefully, her expression tightening as she listened to his heartbeat. She ordered tests, blood work, scans, x-rays. The waiting room felt endless. Emily sat in silence, her hands shaking, her mind looping through every possible worst-case scenario. Finally, the door opened. Dr. Harris stepped out, her face solemn. "Emily," she began softly, "we need to talk." Inside the exam room, the air was heavy with the scent of antiseptic and sorrow. Max's condition is complicated, Dr. Harris said, turning the monitor toward Emily. He was born with a congenital defect in his heart. It's deteriorating faster than we expected. His organs are starting to weaken. Emily stared at the screen, trying to make sense of the words, but they felt distant, muffled, like a nightmare she couldn't wake from. There must be something we can do, she pleaded. Medication, surgery, anything. Dr. Harris shook her head sadly. His body is too small, too fragile. A procedure could kill him before it saves him. The kindest thing you can do is make him comfortable. Emily's world tilted. The words "make him comfortable" echoed in her mind like a cruel verdict. She reached for Max, who lay curled on the table, breathing softly. No, he's a fighter, she whispered. He beat the odds once. He can do it again. Dr. Harris placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. I've seen miracles before, Emily, she said quietly. But sometimes, love isn't about holding on. It's about letting go. Emily looked down at Max, who gazed back at her with tired, trusting eyes. She could almost hear his silent promise. I'll keep fighting. For you. Tears blurred her vision as she lifted him gently into her arms. She didn't know how long they had left, but she knew one thing for certain. She would fight alongside him until his very last breath. Days turned into weeks, and Emily's apartment slowly transformed into a miniature hospital. Blankets lined the floor, medicine bottles filled the shelves, and a soft heating pad became Max's new bed. Every morning began the same, a whispered prayer, followed by gentle feeding through a syringe. Emily refused to give up, clinging to every small sign of progress like a lifeline. When Max lifted his head or wagged his tail, she smiled through tears, whispering, See, you're still fighting. But as the days passed, those little victories grew rarer. His breathing grew shallow again, and sometimes he'd shiver uncontrollably even under 3 blankets. Emily called Dr. Harris constantly, hoping for a miracle, for a new treatment, for something, anything, that could buy them more time. We'll try adjusting his medication, Dr. Harris said one evening, though her tone carried little conviction. Sometimes they rally, sometimes they don't. Emily stayed by his side day and night. She barely ate, barely slept. The world outside her small apartment didn't exist anymore. Only Max did. Every sound he made sent her heart racing. She began counting his breaths in her notebook, tracking his condition hour by hour. Hope was fading, but she refused to admit it. You're my miracle, she whispered one night, holding his paw. We don't quit. Not now. One afternoon, a sudden noise startled her. Max had tried to stand, wobbling toward the door as if he wanted to go outside. Emily's heart leapt. You want some sun, buddy? She asked softly. She carried him to the park nearby, wrapping him gently in a blanket. The autumn air was crisp, the trees painted gold. Max lifted his nose, sniffing the breeze weakly. For a brief, precious moment, he looked alive again. She set him down in the grass, and he took 2 shaky steps before collapsing softly. Emily rushed forward, gathering him in her arms. It's okay, sweetheart, it's okay, she whispered, rocking him gently. He blinked up at her, eyes cloudy but calm. That moment, the wind rustling the leaves, the sun warming his fur, was the closest thing to peace she had seen in weeks. As the shadows grew long, Emily knew deep down what was coming. When she carried Max back home that evening, he barely moved. His small body felt lighter than ever, his heartbeat faint beneath her fingers. She laid him on the blanket, tears blurring her vision. Please, she whispered into the silence. Just one more day. But as she sat beside him, watching the slow rise and fall of his chest, Emily realized, sometimes love means watching the light fade, even when you're not ready to let it go. The sky was gray that morning, heavy with the promise of rain. Emily sat in the passenger seat of her friend's car, Max wrapped tightly in a blanket on her lap. His body was still, his breathing faint and uneven. Every few seconds he gave a weak sigh, his tiny chest rising with visible effort. Emily's hand trembled as she stroked his head, whispering, It's okay, baby. We're just going to see Dr. Harris. She'll help you feel better. But the truth was, she wasn't sure if he'd ever come back home again. The drive to the clinic felt endless. The windshield wipers swept rhythmically, each motion sounding like a heartbeat counting down time. Emily stared out the window, her reflection pale and distant. Her friend Sarah drove silently, occasionally glancing at her with eyes full of sympathy. "Are you sure you're ready for this?" she asked quietly. Emily didn't answer. She couldn't. Her throat burned too much to speak. When they arrived, the vet's office was unusually quiet. Dr. Harris was waiting at the door, her face gentle but somber. "Come in," she said softly. Emily stepped inside, clutching Max close. The familiar scent of antiseptic hit her immediately, the same smell from the night she had first saved him. Only this time she wasn't sure she could. Dr. Harris led them to the private room, where a small table was covered with a soft white towel. Emily hesitated before placing Max down. He whimpered faintly as if sensing her fear. "He's tired," Dr. Harris said softly. "His heart's working too hard. He's in pain, Emily." Emily knelt beside the table, her face inches from his. "I know," she whispered, voice trembling. I don't want him to be scared." Her tears fell freely now, landing on his fur like quiet raindrops. Max looked up at her, his eyes glassy but calm, as if he understood everything. Her love, her pain, her helplessness. Dr. Harris set the syringe down on a tray, her voice barely above a whisper. "You can hold him when you're ready." Emily's breath hitched. Every fiber of her being screamed to stop time, to turn back the clock to when he was just a playful puppy chasing her slippers. But she knew she couldn't. She gathered Max in her arms, pressing his face against her heart. "You're my best boy," she whispered. "You made me believe in miracles." Dr. Harris stepped closer. The air grew still, the kind of stillness that comes before goodbye. And as the room filled with silence, Max stirred weakly in Emily's embrace, his paw twitching one last time, as though saying, "Not yet." The clock on the wall ticked softly, a fragile rhythm in a room filled with heartbreak. Emily sat in the small, sterile room with Max in her lap. Her tears had long since dried, leaving silent streaks on her cheeks. She wasn't ready. No one ever was. Dr. Harris entered quietly, her footsteps barely audible, carrying the syringe that would end Max's pain. "You can hold him," she whispered. "He'll go peacefully." Emily nodded weakly. She gathered Max close, pressing her cheek against his head. His breathing was faint, his heartbeat slow, almost imperceptible. "It's okay, baby," she whispered, voice trembling. "You can rest now. You don't have to fight anymore." Her tears fell onto his fur, one by one, soaking the blanket that wrapped him. Dr. Harris moved closer, kneeling beside them. "He's lucky to have you," she said softly. "Not many dogs get to leave this world in the arms of someone who loves them." The words should have brought comfort, but to Emily they only deepened the ache. As the vet reached for Max's paw, something unexpected happened. The little dog stirred, his body twitching weakly. Emily froze, her breath catching. Max lifted his head just slightly and looked at her. His cloudy eyes met hers, filled with a glimmer of something almost human. Then, with all the strength left in his fragile body, he moved his paw and placed it against her wrist. Dr. Harris gasped quietly. Emily stared in disbelief. Max's paw pressed harder, trembling, his head resting against her chest. It wasn't random movement, it was deliberate. He was hugging her. His small, failing heart still found the strength to give her that one final moment. Emily broke down completely, sobbing into his fur. "Oh, sweetheart," she cried. "I love you so much." Her voice shook with every word. The room fell silent except for her quiet weeping and the faint sound of Max's last breaths. Dr. Harris stepped back, tears welling in her own eyes. "Sometimes," she whispered, "they know it's goodbye." Emily held Max tighter, refusing to let go. The air felt heavy, almost sacred, a stillness that wrapped around them both. His breathing slowed until it was barely there. And just as the vet reached to begin the injection, Max's body tensed suddenly. His chest rose sharply, his eyes flicked open, and a faint sound escaped his throat. A weak, struggling whine. Dr. Harris froze mid-motion. Emily's heart skipped a beat. "Wait," the vet murmured, eyes widening. "Something's not right." And in that instant, the sorrow in the room shifted into something else. Confusion, shock, and a flicker of impossible hope. For a moment, no one moved. The air in the room seemed to freeze as Max's chest rose and fell in small, uneven bursts. Emily's eyes widened, confusion cutting through her grief. "What's happening?" she whispered, clutching him tighter. Dr. Harris blinked rapidly, the syringe still in her trembling hand. I don't know, she murmured, leaning in. The puppy's heartbeat, once faint and irregular, suddenly grew louder on the monitor. A weak but steady rhythm that shouldn't have been possible. Emily's tears stopped midstream. Hope flickered in her chest, fragile and terrified. He's breathing again, she said breathlessly. He's fighting. Max's tiny body trembled as though something deep inside him had sparked back to life. His paw twitched against her wrist again, this time with more strength. His eyes fluttered open halfway, unfocused but alive. Dr. Harris immediately sprang into action. "Get me a scanner," she ordered the nurse. The syringe was set aside. "We're not doing anything until I understand what's happening." The nurse hurried out of the room, returning seconds later with a portable monitor. Dr. Harris ran the scanner along Max's chest, her brows furrowing deeper with every passing second. The rhythmic beeping filled the silence. Faster now, steadier. Emily could barely breathe. "Is that good?" she asked, her voice trembling with both hope and fear. Dr. Harris didn't answer right away. She stared at the screen, her expression shifting from confusion to disbelief. "This can't be right," she whispered. "His heart activity? It's improving." The nurse looked just as stunned. "But how? He was in terminal failure an hour ago." "I don't know," Dr. Harris admitted, glancing back at Max. "Maybe his heart's compensating. Maybe an adrenaline surge, but this isn't normal." Max let out a faint sound, something between a whine and a sigh. Emily brushed his fur gently, whispering, "You're okay, baby. You're okay." But her voice cracked as she realized she didn't understand any of it. He shouldn't be alive, and yet he was fighting with every ounce of strength left in his tiny body. Dr. Harris straightened slowly, her face pale. "Something's off," she said under her breath. "Something we missed." Emily's heart raced. "Missed what?" The vet turned to her, eyes sharp now, focused. "I don't know yet. But whatever it is, I'm not letting him go until I find out." Outside, thunder rumbled in the distance, a storm building as if mirroring the turmoil inside the room. And for the first time in weeks, Emily didn't just feel sadness. She felt something she'd almost forgotten existed, a spark of impossible, fragile hope. Dr. Harris leaned over the monitor, her brow furrowed as she scrolled through Max's readings again. The numbers didn't make sense. His heart rate had stabilized, his oxygen levels were improving, and his temperature, once dangerously low, was climbing back to normal. "This shouldn't be happening," she whispered. "It's physiologically impossible." Emily clutched Max closer, her pulse racing. "But it is happening," she said, her voice trembling between hope and disbelief. Dr. Harris motioned for the nurse. "Prepare an ultrasound," she ordered quickly. "There's something internal we missed." Emily watched anxiously as they set up the small machine beside the table. The room was so silent that the hum of the monitor felt deafening. The vet moved the probe gently across Max's tiny chest, eyes darting between the screen and his body. Then she froze. "Wait, what is that?" she murmured, zooming in. Emily leaned forward, her heart pounding. On the screen, something faint flickered, a small rhythmic pulse that didn't match his heartbeat. "It's not his heart," Dr. Harris whispered, adjusting the settings. "It's pressure, fluid movement, but not infection." She frowned deeper. "It looks like—" Her words trailed off, replaced by disbelief. "Oh my God," Emily's stomach twisted. What's wrong?" Dr. Harris looked up slowly. "It's not wrong," she said, voice trembling slightly. "It's incredible. There's a foreign mass near his heart, but it's not a tumor. It's tissue, regenerative tissue. His body's trying to heal itself." The nurse gasped. "You mean his heart is rebuilding?" Dr. Harris nodded, still stunned. "Partially, yes. It's as if his cells activated some kind of dormant response, something we've never seen in dogs this young. Whatever triggered it might be what saved him." Emily stared at Max, tears welling again, but this time from wonder, not sorrow. "So he's not dying?" she asked softly. Dr. Harris hesitated. "Not yet," she said cautiously. "But we're not out of danger. His body's fighting to stabilize. We need to keep him on oxygen and monitor his vitals. If this regeneration continues, he might just have a chance." Emily pressed her forehead to Max's, whispering shakily, "You hear that, buddy? You're not done yet." The vet placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "Whatever's happening inside him, it's extraordinary," she said. I want to send these scans to a lab immediately. As Dr. Harris turned to leave, Max's eyes fluttered open again, this time brighter, clearer. He gave a faint wag of his tail, the smallest spark of life returning. Emily let out a trembling laugh through her tears. For the first time in weeks, hope didn't feel impossible anymore. It felt real, the clock was ticking. Every second felt heavier than the last. Dr. Harris barked quick orders to her team as the room transformed from quiet despair into controlled chaos. I need the oxygen mask ready, stat. Increase the IV drip to half rate and prep the portable incubator, she said sharply. The nurses moved with precision, but beneath their focus was something else, awe. They were witnessing what shouldn't be possible. Emily stood at the corner, arms wrapped around herself, watching as Max lay surrounded by monitors and wires. The rhythmic beat of his heart filled the air, erratic but alive. Her throat tightened. Please, please don't stop fighting, she whispered under her breath. Her voice cracked and her hands trembled so hard she had to grip the chair for balance. Dr. Harris placed the oxygen tube carefully near Max's snout. He's still weak, she murmured. But whatever is happening inside him, it's like his cells are rewriting the rules. She adjusted the monitor again, eyes scanning the screen in disbelief. I've never seen anything like this. Can he survive? Emily asked, her voice small, terrified. Dr. Harris didn't answer right away. If this regenerative process keeps accelerating, she said finally, we might have a chance. But if it fails midway, his heart could collapse completely. Emily took a step forward, brushing her fingers through Max's fur. You can do this, she whispered. You always fight, remember? Her tears dropped silently onto the blanket beneath him. Max's paw twitched faintly, his body responding to her voice as if it recognized the love behind every word. The machines beeped louder. His oxygen levels climbed another notch. The nurse gasped softly. He's stabilizing again, she said, eyes wide. Dr. Harris blinked rapidly, almost disbelieving. Keep the pressure steady. He's trying to come back. She turned to Emily, her tone urgent but hopeful. Whatever connection you two have, keep talking to him. He's responding to you. Emily's voice broke as she leaned closer. Hey, Max. Remember the park? The grass, the sunlight? Her words trembled. We'll go back there again, I promise. You just have to hold on. As if pulled by her words, Max's breathing steadied. His chest rose and fell in smoother rhythm. The monitors slowed into a calm, strong pattern. Dr. Harris exhaled, half laughing, half crying. He's doing it. He's actually doing it. The tension in the room melted into cautious relief. But beneath it all, Emily knew this wasn't over. The fight wasn't finished, and not yet. They had pulled Max back from the edge once. But fate, she feared, might not let go so easily the second time. The operating room lights glared brightly, reflecting off stainless steel trays and white walls. The tension was so thick that every sound and every beep, every breath, felt amplified. Dr. Harris adjusted her gloves, her voice calm but urgent. We're moving him to surgery, she announced. There's still internal pressure near the heart. If that tissue's growing, we need to relieve it before it suffocates him. Emily's stomach twisted. Surgery? But you said, I know, Dr. Harris interrupted gently. It's risky, but if we do nothing, he won't survive the night. Emily nodded numbly, her hands clutching the edge of the table. Max lay before her, motionless except for the faint rise of his chest under the oxygen mask. His fur glistened with antiseptic, his tiny body dwarfed by the medical instruments around him. You're strong, my boy, she whispered, voice cracking. You've made it this far. Don't stop now. The vet techs worked quickly, attaching new monitors, double-checking the anesthesia levels. The rhythmic beeping of the heart monitor filled the room, a fragile lifeline holding everyone's breath. Dr. Harris gave a small nod. All right, let's begin. The incision was small, precise. Dr. Harris moved delicately, her hands steady despite the storm in her chest. She guided a thin camera probe inside, eyes locked on the screen. What she saw made her gasp. Unbelievable, she whispered. The tissue, it's not scarring. It's regenerating. It's forming new vessels. Her assistant leaned closer, astonished. That's not possible. He doesn't even have the genetic markers for accelerated healing. It doesn't matter what's possible, Dr. Harris said quietly, eyes glistening. It's happening. The tiny heart flickered on the monitor, glowing faintly under the surgical light. It wasn't failing, it was rebuilding itself. Emily pressed her hand to her mouth, tears spilling freely as she watched through the window. "He's fighting," she whispered. "He's really fighting." Minutes stretched into hours. Sweat beaded on Dr. Harris's forehead as she sealed the incision, her voice steady. "Vitals stable. Oxygen normal. We did it." The entire room seemed to exhale at once. The nurse covered Max with a soft towel, checking his pulse again just to be sure. It was strong, stronger than it had been in days. Dr. Harris looked up, her voice trembling with awe. "I don't know what to call this," she said softly, "but it's a miracle." Emily pressed her palm against the glass, whispering through tears, "No, it's love." And as the monitors beeped in steady rhythm, everyone in that room realized they had just witnessed something far beyond science. The room was dim now, lit only by the soft glow of the monitor beside Max's bed. The storm outside had passed, leaving a calm drizzle tapping gently against the clinic windows. Hours had crawled by since the surgery, and Emily hadn't moved from her chair. She sat hunched forward, hands clasped, eyes fixed on the rise and fall of Max's tiny chest beneath the blanket. Every breath felt like a silent prayer answered. Dr. Harris stepped quietly into the room, clipboard in hand. "He's stable," she said softly. "His vitals are holding strong." Her voice carried a mix of disbelief and gratitude. "To be honest, I still don't understand how he made it." Emily smiled faintly through exhaustion. "He made a promise," she whispered. "He told me he wouldn't give up." She reached out, brushing her fingers across Max's paw. His fur was warm again, alive. The memory of his limp, cold body earlier that day made her shiver. "His regenerative tissue is continuing to develop," Dr. Harris explained. "We'll need to monitor him for a few days, but if this continues, he might make a full recovery." Emily's eyes filled with tears. "A full recovery," she repeated, the words tasting like hope for the first time in weeks. She rested her head beside him on the bed, her voice trembling. "You did it, buddy. You actually did it." Then, without warning, she felt movement, a small, soft brush against her hand. She lifted her head slowly, hardly daring to breathe. Max's paw twitched again. Once, twice, and then his eyelids fluttered open. For a moment, she thought she was dreaming. His amber eyes, once dull and lifeless, now shimmered faintly in the light. "Hey," Emily whispered, tears spilling down her cheeks. "Hey, baby boy." Max blinked slowly, his gaze finding hers. His tail moved just enough to make the blanket rustle. A weak sound escaped his throat. A faint, broken whine that sounded like the world's softest hello. Dr. Harris gasped quietly. "He's conscious," she said, eyes wide. "He's actually waking up." Emily laughed through tears, covering her mouth. "You scared me half to death," she whispered, leaning close. "Don't ever do that again." Max blinked again, his breathing calm and steady. The heart monitor beeped in a perfect rhythmic pattern. Dr. Harris shook her head in amazement. "After everything his body's been through, he shouldn't even be awake yet." Emily smiled, brushing her thumb gently under Max's chin. "He's a miracle," she said softly. "My miracle." And as Max nestled his head into her palm, his eyes slowly closing again, this time not from weakness, but from peace, the clinic filled with something no machine could measure. Quiet, overwhelming love. The following morning, sunlight streamed gently through the clinic's glass windows, bathing the recovery room in soft gold. Emily stirred awake in her chair, her neck aching from hours of watching over Max. She blinked against the light and turned to see Dr. Harris entering with a folder pressed tightly against her chest. Her expression was calm but serious, the look of someone who had found answers she could barely believe. "Emily," she said softly, pulling up a chair beside her. "I got the lab results back." Emily's heart began to race. "Is he okay?" she asked quickly, her voice trembling. Dr. Harris nodded, a small smile tugging at the corner of her lips. "He's more than okay," she said. "He's extraordinary." She opened the folder and laid several printouts on the table. Blood reports, cell scans, genetic graphs. Max's body is producing something we've never documented before, a regenerative compound. It's like his cells are rewriting themselves to repair damaged tissue, faster than any known process. His heart didn't just heal, Emily. It rebuilt. Emily blinked, unable to process the words. "You mean he healed himself?" "In a way, yes," Dr. Harris replied, her tone filled with awe. But what's truly remarkable is what might have triggered it. There's evidence his hormonal and neurological responses surged just before the recovery began, specifically during moments of emotional connection. Emily frowned, confused. You mean when he hugged me? Dr. Harris smiled faintly. Exactly. That kind of bond, the intensity of it, may have triggered something we can't scientifically explain yet. He wasn't just responding to medicine or treatment. He was responding to you. Emily covered her mouth, tears flooding her eyes again. She looked down at Max, who lay sleeping peacefully on the blanket beside her, his small chest rising in steady rhythm. So he didn't survive because of me, she whispered. He survived for me. Dr. Harris nodded softly. I think he did. Sometimes love does things biology can't explain. The room fell quiet, filled only by the steady beeping of the heart monitor. Emily reached down, gently stroking Max's fur, whispering, You really are my miracle. Dr. Harris smiled warmly, her eyes glistening. He's not just a miracle, Emily. He's living proof of what devotion can do. And in that moment, as the sun warmed the little clinic room and the world outside moved on, Emily realized the truth. Max's survival wasn't luck, or science, or fate. It was love in its purest, most powerful form. A week later, the shelter that once echoed with quiet sorrow was filled with laughter and joy. Word of Max's miraculous recovery had spread quickly. Volunteers, staff, and even a few strangers who'd heard the story online came to see the puppy who refused to die. Emily stood near the front desk, holding Max in her arms, his fur glossy again, his tail wagging softly. He looked healthy, alive, and brighter than ever. Dr. Harris approached with a clipboard, smiling in disbelief every time she looked at him. I've seen recoveries, she said, shaking her head, but nothing like this. He's officially out of danger. Emily's eyes filled with tears again, but this time they were tears of joy. She pressed her face against Max's head, whispering, You did it, my boy. You really did it. He responded with a happy bark, as if understanding every word. The shelter staff gathered around, many of them still in awe. He was supposed to be gone, one of them said quietly. Now look at him. Emily smiled through tears. He wasn't ready to leave, she said softly. He still had something to prove. Dr. Harris crouched beside them, scratching Max gently under the chin. He's going to make a lot of people believe again, she said warmly. Sometimes we forget how powerful love really is. Emily nodded, her heart swelling. He reminded me too, she said. When I found him that night in the rain, I thought I was saving him. But maybe he was sent to save me. The shelter grew quiet again, everyone feeling the weight of her words. Max tilted his head up, licking the tears from Emily's cheek as if agreeing. It was a moment that felt sacred, the kind that didn't need words to be understood. Dr. Harris handed Emily a small envelope. Before you go, she said, there's something I want you to have. Inside was a note, handwritten in elegant script. It read, Some stories remind us that miracles aren't born from science but from love. Max's fight will help us study something new. But more than that, it's helped us remember what compassion can do. Emily smiled, tucking the note into her pocket. She turned to Max, who wagged his tail eagerly, ready to go home. Come on, buddy, she whispered. Let's start our new chapter. As they stepped outside into the sunlight, the world seemed brighter. The wind carried the scent of rain and renewal. Emily took a deep breath, looked down at Max, and whispered, Thank you for choosing to stay. And Max, ever her miracle, pressed his head against her hand, not as a goodbye, but as a promise of forever. The sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of amber and rose as Emily and Max walked through the park, the same park where their story had truly begun. The grass shimmered with dew and children's laughter echoed in the distance. Max trotted beside her, tail wagging, eyes bright, every step a reminder of the miracle they had both lived through. Emily stopped near the old oak tree, where she had once sat praying for him to survive. She knelt beside Max, running her fingers through his fur, and whispered, You kept your promise. He looked up at her, ears perked, his tongue lolling in a happy grin. For the first time in months, Emily didn't feel the weight of fear, only peace. Dr. Harris's words replayed in her mind. Sometimes, love does things science can't explain. Emily smiled faintly, gazing at the sunset. You proved that, didn't you? She said softly. You showed everyone that hope doesn't die, it fights. Max barked once, short and cheerful, as if agreeing. She laughed, tears brimming in her eyes again. Around them, the world felt alive, the wind rustling through leaves, the soft hum of life carrying on. Emily realized something profound then. She hadn't just witnessed a miracle. She had been part of one. They walked slowly toward the shelter gates where a small crowd had gathered, volunteers, children, and even a few strangers holding phones, capturing the moment. That's him, someone whispered. That's the miracle dog. Emily waved shyly, but Max stole the attention, bounding forward and greeting everyone with gentle licks and wagging tail. Dr. Harris approached, her usual calm replaced with a warm smile. You both look good together, she said. You've given everyone here something they desperately needed, hope. Emily nodded, her voice soft but steady. I think that's what he came into my life for, she said. To remind me, and maybe everyone, that love doesn't give up even when everything else does.